Coping with Tre Tailor, giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life. Because we'll always be coping with something. Coping.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for Coping. I'm Tre Tailor, and we're giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life because we will always be coping with something. Today, we are coping with life as an African American during the late Jim Crow era. USC and Historic Columbia have come together to put on an amazing talk. It's going on Thursday. Robin Waits with Historic Columbia and a veteran broadcaster, Beryl Dakers, joins us. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We're going to have a great, fascinating conversation with both of those ladies about a great seminar coming up, and we will talk to them in just a minute. But first, don't forget that scrolling at the bottom of the screen throughout the show, you will see information on COVID tests and vaccines, community events, job listings, also financial resources, including scholarships, help with your rent, mortgage, bills, and so much more. We are streaming on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please post, share, like, and follow so we can get under. And you are watching Coping. We are giving you info and advice to help you thrive and survive in life. Today, we are coping with life as an African American during the late Jim Crow era. Robin Waits, executive director with along with a veteran broadcaster and also a board member from the Advisory Council at Historic Columbia, Beryl Dakers, joins us. Ladies, thank you again so much for joining us today. This is such a fascinating topic. Why did you and how did you guys come up, Robin, I guess this is for you, with doing this talk?
Yeah, we've been doing, I think, work in the Waverly community, in a number of African American kind of focused historic communities for over a decade. And so any opportunity I think that we have to bring some of the research that we've done to the fore, to encourage people to explore some of the stories of really significant points of history and individuals who are associated with that, we love to provide access to that. We have a great partner in the University of South Carolina who often brings scholars to Columbia, and a couple of those are native of Columbia, South Carolina. And so we saw this as an opportunity to partner with the History Center at USC while these wonderful scholars are here to talk about their ties to Columbia and explore their experiences as young people in Columbia.
Yeah. Now, this is part of, as you said, an initiative with USC. Now, is something going on before this talk on Thursday?
So Randall Kennedy, who is one of our panelists, is going to be on campus the day before, and he will be doing talking with students and engagement with other folks as part of the university community the day before. But we're taking the opportunity, I think, to present something as a public program to a broader audience while Randall Kennedy and Thavolia Glimp are here.
Now, both of those folks, Beryl, are authors, historians, and both, like you, have ties to the Jim Crow era, being African American. Tell us a little bit about the two panelists.
Well, I think that the thing that's really interesting to me is that they are both very distinguished academics. Randall is a law professor at Harvard University. Duke is Thavolia is a history professor at Duke University, and both have written extensively, often about race and its impact on various aspects of society, whatever they're writing about. So it's quite interesting to see that their birth right comes out of the Columbia Black community, and has obviously influenced the way that they think and the way that they approach these subjects.
Well, your being the moderator is excellent because you too have the same rich heritage and experience that the two of them do, having grown up on the street that I live on right now in the historic Waverly community. And so as we talk about African American life, Black life, Negro life, I guess it was called back then, in the late Jim Crow era. Tell us about some of your experiences.
Well, I'm a very proud daughter of Waverly. Robin has heard me say this over and over again. I think when people talk about the Jim Crow era, they always talk about the negatives. It's always about, what we didn't have, what we couldn't do, uh, our inferiority, supposedly, in terms of certainly of material possessions or of educational opportunities and things of that sort. I am of the opinion that I grew up in the best neighborhood ever. Waverly was such an all-inclusive, comprehensive community that you had everything. You had a wide variety of people living there. There was diversity in economics, there was diversity in terms of the jobs, the things they did. There was diversity in every possible way that you could think of, except racially. Okay. And so it was a very self-sufficient neighborhood. In these days, when we look back and we talk about civil rights, the civil rights giants were right there in Waverly. I mean, Matthew Perry grew up in Waverly. Reverend James Hinton, who was the head of the state NAACP, was diagonally right across the street on Heights Street, right there in Waverly. George Elmore operated his 5 and 10 cent store on Gervais Street, right down the street and around the corner. Edwin Russell, who was a part of the Manhattan Project, which developed the nuclear bomb, also right there in Waverly. And the people, we had our own hospital. We had our own banks. We had our own little businesses. There were shoemakers and there were tailors and there were dry cleaners. Mr. Ernest Henderson was a Tuskegee airman, but he operated a dry cleaners right on Gervais Street next to Elmore's store. We had our own library. The library was segregated, but that's okay because we had this wonderful old musty shelf library in an old church on Gervais Street, next to what is now the Masonic Temple. So what other community would you have 6 churches within walking distance, 2 universities within walking distance, your own hotel? We had a street that we called Doctors Row, where all of these physicians and pharmacists and dentists live. It's just a wonderful potpourri.
Yeah, it sounds really, and I know you said, it was separate, supposedly not equal, but it was so rich in so many things. I love that you mentioned the thing about, all of the historic people, because I live in the neighborhood, I walk the neighborhood, and I'm so happy for the signs, Robin and Beryl, that are, placed throughout the community and I'm sharing with my grands now, the Matthew Perry sign and all of the signs that show people how rich this community was, and it still is, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think anytime that you can have those layers of stories that are accessible in a variety of ways, whether it's through the historic markers or the self-guided tours that Historic Columbia has on our website of Waverly before it was sort of divided by Gervais Street and turned into some call Lower Waverly and Waverly. Anytime you can build on that, I think what's really wonderful about having a resource like Beryl or folks like Randall Kennedy and Pabolia Glimpf is you can actually hear their experiences first person. And as they talk about some of these individuals, like Beryl often does, she knew these giants of the movement. And so you've got this really wonderful kind of generational connection. And then that links us to the present, right? So that we can understand how these people, but also how their experiences are relevant to us today. So continuing to find those ways to bring these folks back, but also celebrate individuals who are here, like Beryl, to be able to pull back kind of these layers and encourage these stories to be shared.
Awesome. Robin Waits is the executive director of Historic Columbia Foundation. Beryl Dakers is a Historic Columbia Advisory Council member and also veteran broadcaster. We're talking about Columbia Conversations, Black Life in Columbia during the late Jim Crow era. It's happening Thursday at St. Luke's, which, by the way, as you talk, Beryl, about so many churches, historic churches in the Waverly community, St. Luke is one of those.
It is indeed, although it did not originate in Waverly.
Okay.
It moved to Waverly during my childhood. So it was very much a part of it. You know, that's where the boys would go for basketball games. And indeed, the rector at St. Luke was one of the co-officiants at my wedding. So
Oh, wow.
it's definitely, that was the church of Richard Roberts, for example, the famed photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. So how important was it to have this conversation in Waverly at some place like a St. Luke?
Robin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that when we have these places where you've got these, you know, the tangible connections to our past, I mean, as Beryl mentioned, the building that we will be in is an 1858 structure, but it certainly is appropriate as it was erected during the time period that we're going to be talking about, right? And I think to also have people be able to drive through or move through that neighborhood who maybe don't visit that neighborhood as often, and you can see, just like you're mentioning, Trey, the wayside signs, or just look at, you know, as soon as you drive through Waverly, there's a lot of really intact, wonderful historic material that gives you a good sense of the significance of that place. So we wanted to be in a place that really speaks to the stories that we'll be sharing.
Right. So
I think too, Trey, this is an opportunity to tackle some of the misconceptions and misinformation people have about that community and about the way people live. You know, right next door to St. Luke's was Ruth Perry's Couture Designs. I mean, who would think that we had our own fashion designer back then in Waverly? And
you know what's interesting about that? I don't mean to interrupt you. That house looks different. It looks like it could have been a really, I mean, it's such an interesting looking house, you know?
She had the front window always housed her fashions.
Yeah.
You know, but then on the other end of that block, we had the house, the Columbia home of Daddy Grace. So variety, it's just an intricate variety of stories there, and a wonderful way of looking at how there were these interconnections. You know, some people lived in the alleys, for example. Some people lived in larger houses. Some lived in smaller houses. We had shotgun houses. We had huge houses. But somehow that community interconnected and it worked. And I think about growing up, my parents both worked. And so on Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, when the milkman came, for example, that's when people used to deliver milk to your home. They always left the door open so that our next door neighbor would get the milk and put it in the refrigerator. Well, people look at me like, you left your door open all day. We did, indeed. That's the way we live. And you knew the people on both sides of the street and around the corner and in the alleyways.
Yeah. And weren't worried about them doing anything of harm to you or your home.
No. I feel
Beryl
particularly privileged.
Is on the historic. Yes. Beryl Dakers is on the advisory council of Historic Columbia Foundation. She's also a veteran broadcaster. And Robin Waits joins us, executive director of Historic Columbia. They have partnered with the University of South Carolina to bring Columbia Conversations, Black Life in Columbia during the late Jim Crow era. Is this a series? I know that Historic Columbia and USC collaborate often on talks like this, and like you said, on walks, talks, and all types of things to help elevate the rich history of South Carolina. What other things can people look forward to, Robin?
Yeah, Trey, I mean, I think honestly, this is because we do so many kind of interesting partnerships with the university and other folks in the community. This is a new kind of title for this program, but we thought it would be a great umbrella for future programs, that we really do want people to work on coming together to listen to each other, and to have conversations about why understanding our very diverse and rich past is important across the board. And so, we're excited about presenting this, but certainly also building the conversations moving forward.
Awesome. It is Columbia Conversations, Black Life in Columbia during the late Jim Crow era. It's Thursday, April 13th. At St. Luke's Church. Journalist Beryl Dakers and Columbia native will lead the conversation with professor and historian Thavolia Glimp. She's over at Duke University, as Beryl said, and professor and author Randall Kennedy, who's at the Harvard Law School. Both were born in Columbia in the early 1950s and have wrote extensively about their time. I'm sure it's going to be such an amazing, rich conversation. Yeah. I look forward to being there. And I thank you all both so much for having these great conversations and hosting series like this. I mean, it's an old saying, but it's so true. We can only move forward if we know what our past is. So I hope that people will come out Thursday and Absolutely. Find more out about historic Columbia and about the beautiful, thriving Waverly community, what it was and what it is, and really now growing to be. Ladies, thank you again so much. Robin Wake, Executive Director with the Historic Columbia Foundation, veteran broadcaster Beryl Dakers. She's also on the advisory board of Historic Columbia. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us today and for hosting these great Columbia conversations. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Trey, and I hope to see you
Thanks,
Thursday.
Trey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both so much. Appreciate you. So listen, if you have a story or initiative that could help someone cope, please email booking@copingwithtreitailor.com. You can see that information scrolling on the bottom of the screen. If you have a product or service that could help someone cope, please email copingwithtreitailor@gmail.com. We would love for you to be a proud sponsor, just like all of our sponsors, including SCDHEC, In It Together SC, also Palmetto Media Connections, Javis Financial Services, the State Fair, Agape Counseling and Training Services, Black Pages, Black Expo, and also the Comet Bus System. Coming up next, your devotional. Next on Coping. I'm Tre Tailor. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
Computers, they're a part of our everyday lives. But when they're not working, they're an everyday problem. So call Computers Unique, your everyday solution. 803-351-5821. Is your computer running slow? Won't turn on? Do you need a screen replaced? Or maybe you just need another computer? Well, Computers Unique is your one-stop shop for all your computer needs. They have a wide variety of new and pre-owned PCs, Macs, and tablets. So call Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. 803-351-5821. 803-351-5821.
Hi, I'm Tre Tailor. We'll always be coping with something, but God is always with us. Today's devotion says, when something in your life or thoughts make you anxious, come to me and talk to me. Thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity to trust you more. That's what we should say. Though the lessons of trust that I send you come wrapped with difficulties, the benefits far outweigh the cost. Well-developed trust will bring you many blessings, not the least of which is my peace. I have promised to keep you in perfect peace to the extent that you trust in me. The world has it backwards, teaching that peace is the result of having enough money, possessions, insurance, security systems. But my peace, God says, is such an all-encompassing gift that it's independent of all circumstances. Though you lose everything else, if you gain my peace, you are rich indeed. That's your devotional for today.
Coping, find peace of mind to survive through whatever. Coping, learning the way that we thrive all together. Coping, finding out what's real. Coping, we can heal, we can heal, we can heal. Coping with stress, coping with strife, bringing hope for success, for improving our life. Coping beyond hoping to do more than survive, ways to live a healthy life. Coping and promoting, learning what you can do, 6 ways to a better you. Coping, survive